Golf has a way of slowing life down. And when life slows down, conversations often go deeper. Because if you're like me, every round's filled with plenty of bogeys, but every day is filled with so many blessings. We can learn from both of those. I'm Justin Whaley. This is Bogeys and Blessings, a place where we're going to talk about golf, life, faith, and all the moments in between that shape us. So let's tee it up today. It's time. Mike looked at me in the pool that morning in Cabo and he said something I'll never forget. It's time. I asked him, time for what? And he said, it's time that I surrender my life to Christ. Makes me emotional just thinking about it. That moment didn't just appear out of nowhere. So let me tell you how we got here. The sun had just come up over the Pacific Ocean as we were sitting out in the pool that morning. Mike and I were staying at a beach house in Cabo. We were looking out across the water before our morning that tea time. We were on a couple's trip with our wives. We were there to take a normal trip. We were there to play golf, to have conversation, eat good food, play games at night, just kind of have fun and hang out. As Mike and I were sitting there that morning, something surreal happened. It was migration season for the whales. And I'm talking these massive, giant whales started like breaching out of the ocean. It was really majestic. And I remember looking at Mike and I told him, I said, man, just think about how far those whales came in their journey. You know, how often they got off track, how they knew to come where they were. But for some reason, they were there at that exact moment. And they were only there at that exact moment doing what they were doing because that was God inspired. And I think in some ways, that's kind of how life is too. That's when Mike looked at me and he said, it's time. Right there in the pool that morning before we ever stepped onto the golf course, my friend surrendered his life to Jesus. And looking back now, that moment didn't just change Mike's life. It changed mine too. Mike and I have been talking for months about faith leading up to that trip. Mike and I's friendship goes back a long way. He grew up in upstate New York, and we had plenty of conversations about faith. Nothing that was ever really forced or anything like that. But I'd just kind of been talking to him about what his conversion moment was. And he grew up Catholic, and he never really had that personal conversion moment. But that morning, for whatever reason that was divinely inspired, was a turning point. After Mike told me that morning, he wanted to go in and grab the wives. They came out. We all got in the pool. He literally prayed the prayer and accepted Christ into his life. And when we came back from that vacation, it was one of those things that I wanted to figure out what could I do to walk this journey with Mike. So I just picked up the phone one day and called him and I said, hey, man, I said, I ran across this app. And in this app, it breaks up the Bible into 19 different journeys. They're 50, 60, 90 days in length, but you read through, and it takes about 3.5 years, you read through the whole Bible. Why don't we do that? So we chose to do that. We're now in our 5th year of reading a chapter in the Bible every single day, but we didn't just read a chapter. We actually took notes. We have 5 years worth of reading the Bible and notes that we took every single day. We just started last summer reading the New Testament, and we're about I'd say probably 2/3 of the way reading through the New Testament for this particular year. What started as me wanting to walk alongside Mike and his newfound faith, it ended up transforming my own relationship with Christ. My faith deepened, my understanding grew, my relationship with Jesus became more personal and more meaningful than it ever had before. And sometimes God uses one person's step of faith to transform someone else's walk too, and that's exactly what happened here. But the story behind this podcast actually began way before that moment. There had been a season in my life where I kept feeling God nudging me to slow down, just slow down my pace of life. I can remember for years, my wife, Juliana, used to always ask me, why do you walk so fast? Well, I never thought I was walking fast. I thought I was just doing what I do. It's pretty clear now, looking back, that she was right, and she's right about most things. The problem is that my pace of life didn't allow any capacity for me to slow down and listen. I didn't know how to do that. And interestingly enough, golf mirrors that same rhythm. And for me, for those of you that know me well, have played any kind of golf with me whatsoever, you know that I really only had one gear in golf, and that's really fast. I typically don't make sure that I'm aimed properly. I don't think about shots. I don't read my putts, those kind of things. I'm out there to just play and to have fun, even though I want to be competitive. And I know that by me not doing those things, I'm probably not as competitive as I probably could be. You can't rush around to golf and ultimately enjoy it, even though I thought I was. It's easy to see as I look back now. We're walking around, we're trying to talk, we're trying to think, we're trying to reflect, and you can't force those things and it be truly organic. But the more I slowed down, the more I started seeing how God was working through moments and conversations that I might have otherwise missed if I didn't take the time to slow down, is when it really started to turn for me. But if I'm being honest, there was a lot of hesitation. Like, I didn't want to do this. For those of you that know me well as well, you know that the last thing that I would want to do is to be in front of a camera talking. I'd rather be in the corner of the room. I'd rather be at the very back. I was a back row Baptist growing up. So I had a lot of fear. I had fear of visibility, being in front of a camera. I had fear of failing and not being a good steward of my time, my talents, my treasures, and those kinds of things. I had a fear of what other people might think. At times I even tried to convince myself that doing something like this might be selfish. Like, this is another way for me to be able to go and just play more golf. As it's shaping up, I don't think that's the case. And part of the reason I don't think that's the case is that it takes a lot of time to prepare for these kinds of things. And it's not just the preparing of the content, because it's not content. It's telling stories exactly like this one. But it takes time and intentionality to do some of those kinds of things. And there have been days to where it's pretty sunny and I'd rather be out on the golf course. I thought I would rather be out on the golf course. But what I'm finding is I'm having joy and fulfillment in doing this. During that season, I came across a devotional, and I asked my wife, Juliana, if she'd do it with me. It was a 30-day devotional. And it was basically in Romans 12:2. It was about taking your thoughts captive. And what I was trying to do is I was trying to process through not just this, but lots of things that were going on in my life. I was trying to figure out, okay, well, like, where's the real origin of these thoughts? Are they based in biblical scripture? Is it coming from me selfishly? Are these words of the enemy? And kind of what I was struck in about the middle of that 30-day devotional with Juliana was Romans 12:2. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the ways of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." I've read that verse lots of times, but it never really had the ability to like permeate like my soul the way it did that day. And I think from that point forward, the fear slowly began to be replaced with peace. Not perfect clarity, but peace. As I finally gave in and leaned into that particular piece, and I thought about it, over time there were a few moments that God confirmed that this might actually be a step that was worth moving forward with. And what I kept hearing is just be obedient. But I was kind of like Peter at the Last Supper. You know, before Jesus was crucified the next day, he had the disciples in the upper room, and the first thing that Jesus did is he sat down with the disciples and he wanted to wash their feet. And Peter was like, no, Lord, like, I can't allow you to do that. And that's kind of what I was saying here is like, Lord, like, I'm not your guy. I'm not the guy to be on a camera. But what God was telling me was the same thing he told Peter. Peter, if I don't do this, who will? And as I really thought through that and prayed about that, I think that's what I was hearing God. It's not that he needs me to go do this podcast. It's that he's asking me to be obedient and do it. I don't believe that I'm prepared. I don't believe that I'm talented, but I'm also learning in my journey with the Lord that you don't have to do either of those. You just have to be available. She and I did that probably in the fall of 25. And then I was in Orlando, Florida in January of 26. I ran across a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a while. And he was telling me about this app called Cross Connect. It's basically an AI faith-based app. He had asked me to look at it a few months before, but I kind of had just gotten busy and didn't do it. But as we reacquainted that day, he was telling me about that app, about the difference that it made in his life. And for some reason, I kind of just felt convicted to do it. So I went home, downloaded the app in the hotel room that night. I've literally been using it every day since. It's incredible. But it's really helped me process a lot of my thoughts around my obedience to move forward with this podcast too. And as I look back, I made the decision to be obedient in January of 26 to go down this path. But as I look back now, I realize the real seed had been planted years earlier. And it's kind of funny, like this is how God works. That moment in Cabo, when Mike surrendered his life to Christ, it didn't just change his life, it changed mine too. And as I take a step back, there's so many things that I can see in the bigger picture now. That moment in Cabo with Mike. I was asked to be a guest speaker at Men's Golf Fellowship, Northwest Arkansas last summer. Didn't want to do it, but was obedient and did it. And I heard God speaking. I've heard plenty of people talk to me since then, and a difference that it made in their lives, just little nuggets and things that I shared. A good friend of mine, Brian Seba, and I, we had an idea several years ago of being intentional in our rounds of golf, being intentional when we take buddies trips. We created what we thought was an organization called Two Sons. We ended up only taking one trip, but it was a very meaningful trip. And later on in this season, you'll hear a little bit more about that. But as I began to look at all those different things, I can see that God had been weaving something in me much earlier. Like he had been placing all the pieces of the puzzle to get me to this point. One of the big things that happened to me in the last 7 or 8 years was I was in a massive lawsuit. It's one of the worst things that someone could ever go through. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, but as I look back now, that was one of the areas to where that God was shaping me and molding me. He was humbling me. He was teaching me. He was teaching me grace and humility and love and trust and comfort and peace and all those kind of things. And I didn't know that, particularly in the middle of what I was going through. I used to say that I was handling things well, and I would talk to my wife and I would tell her that I'm doing okay and that I trusted the Lord. And the ironic thing is I did trust the Lord, like I really did in my heart, but my actions didn't say that. So as I look at all of these things, God's been doing this. He's been planting these seeds all along for me to be where I am today. Eventually the idea clicked. What if I could go back to that thought about being intentional on the golf course? What if there was a place where these kinds of stories that are happening every day in golf courses throughout the world, we could create a platform for people to just come and tell their story about how golf, faith, and life might have all interconnected and how it might have changed them, or even if it didn't change them, how maybe it could in the future. So here we are. These will be stories about golf. They'll be based in real faith and real life. That's how Bogeys and Blessings was born. One thing I've realized through all this is that faith isn't something that we can just separate from our daily lives. God weaves us right into them. He does it in our work. He does it in our friendships. He does it in our hobbies. He does it in our travels, even on a golf course. So the question becomes, where might God already be working in your life in places that you spend time every single day? So before we finish today's round, let's aim at the flagstick. Today's flagstick is going to be Proverbs 16:9. It says, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." Sometimes the moments we think are ordinary are actually the ones God is using to shape the direction of our lives. We don't have to be perfectly equipped. We don't have to be perfectly confident. I'm not. We just have to be available, and that's what I'm going to try to do. The final putt for today. Where might God already be working in your life that you haven't noticed yet? We hope you enjoyed today's episode. We hope you'll be back for episode 2 next week. It's going to be called Kingdom Mulligans. These will be segments about grace and redemption that we'll have occasionally on the show. Just so happens that this one is a story of my own that I had from Sage Valley last fall. I'm Justin Whaley, and this is Bogeys and Blessings. However you found us, we're grateful you did. Until next time, may your bogeys turn into blessings.